shit, he's already on.
Questions get answered, if not during the segment, then at the end of the meeting.
Thank you, Commissioner Appa. And I think with that little introduction on Zoom, we're ready to go. So first we have, we've done the roll call. We need to approve the meeting agenda. So tonight's meeting agenda includes some consent items. It's the minutes from our April 20th meeting. It includes the reapproval of the FY20 quarter 3 and quarter 4 reports and the FY21 quarter 2 report. There's also a public space permit for a driveway repair at 2916 Ellicott Street. And I think Commissioner Mehta will speak to that if there's needed. And I think that's it for the consent items, and any items to be added or subtracted from tonight's agenda.
Oh, David, to be clear, the financial report is an addition to the agenda, since the agenda as the draft agenda as published did not have that. So, so we have to indicate that that is actually, we're doing we have revised financial reports, and I'm trying to pull that up. So we're just going to add that as a third item under the consent agenda.
That's correct.
Those.
Yep.
It's pretty straightforward. So,
right. And so is there anything else to be added to tonight's agenda or taken off? And hearing
Commissioner Castillo, if I may.
Of course.
I know we're about to approve the consent agenda with the minutes. So just want to explain what's going on with those quarterly reports. Okay. Essentially, these are corrections to last year's reports. Our support, Rachel, has been working very closely with OA and C to resolve some issues in the QFR spreadsheet that drives our reporting process. So there was a $36 correction in last year's reports that trickled down through the subsequent quarters that has now been corrected in those reports. And then we found in our FY21 Q2 report that we had a 12-cent error. So fairly minor errors, but we do need to correct them so we can actually resubmit these as signed quarterly reports. That's what we're approving as part of the consent agenda.
No, I appreciate that, Commissioner Wall. Any questions from fellow commissioners on this? Okay, I think we've got everything set. Motion to approve tonight's agenda, including consent items. A motion?
Motion to approve.
Second?
Second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye. I'm trying to catch who made the motion. Was that Alex?
Oh, that's right.
Yes.
Thanks.
Yeah. Yes. All right. Thank you, Commissioner Nemeth, for that reminder. All right. So next on the agenda, we have the commissioner updates and treasurer's report first. And so let's, I'm going to go to who I can see in my screen. So Commissioner Nemeth, any updates from you tonight?
Yes, actually, I have a couple of things to bring up. Not specific SMD items in this instance, but there are a couple of things I think we should just discuss. And one of them people might notice is that we are down a commissioner. We have a vacancy that in 3F07, which I'm sure, David, you were going to probably be mentioning as well. I don't know exactly when Matt submitted his resignation, but chances are the vacancy will be formally announced in the DC Register. I'm hoping this Friday. So the way the process works is when someone submits the resignation, the Board of Elections announces a vacancy in the DC Register. The DC Register is published every Friday. And so presumably this Friday, hopefully it'll be announced. And then following that announcement, following the Monday following the announcement, the publication in DC Register, petitions can be, the petition period can begin. It's a 3-week period. So if anyone is interested in running for that seat, we will have a special election. If there's only one person who winds up submitting petitions, then that individual winds up being appointed to that seat, and the special election will actually be held. During this COVID time, we had some problems with special elections. The DC Council has now addressed that, so we can actually hold special elections while we're still in this virtual meeting situation. Though I don't know exactly how that works, and we'd have to talk to OANC and figure all that out if we have to get to that point. Hopefully, I don't know, I mean, it'd be nice after having a full complement of commissioners for this short period of time, after a very long time of not having the full complement. I hope we get someone soon. So please, someone in 3F07, please do join us. We're a nice bunch. We don't bite. Well, sometimes we do, but.
Commissioner Moore, anything else?
So that's the first thing. The other thing that I wanted to bring up is, as this health emergency seems to be winding down, technically, the current DC health emergency expires on May 20th. Now today, DC Council voted to allow the mayor to have the authority to extend it some more. I mean, gave her authority through July to be able to extend it. And we're waiting to see what the mayor is going to do. I mean, government's opening up, by June 11th, everything is supposed to be fully reopened. So exactly how that's going to impact things, I don't know, but presumably we'll still be under a health emergency. She's still not going to let that expire. How that's going to affect us is, when COVID hit last year, DC Council passed emergency legislation that enabled us to meet virtually. And we can only meet virtually while there is, at least on the way the law was written then, I'm not sure if they made any amendments to it, that's changed, while the public health emergency is in effect. So I don't know whether we're going to meet virtually or in person in June. As of right now, if the mayor lets that order expire on the 20th and does not formally extend it, my understanding is the way the current law is, we'll be getting together in person in June, which means we have to start thinking about that. I don't know do we have Juanita Gray here?
Yes. Yeah.
Hi. So, we've been using UDC's facilities. I don't know if we'd be able to use that again in June or July. We don't have an August meeting scheduled, but we have to start thinking in terms of possible physical meetings this summer. So,
Commissioner Nemeth, yeah, thank you for that. So I think we're gonna, we will huddle relatively quickly after this meeting to let people know what the, kind of what our options are, and then B, what, based on those options, what we can do, whether it's at UDC or, it's nice outside, but I don't know, we'll have to make sure we get the note out to people, in advance, so they know whether we're online like this or in person or some combination. I mean, just again, I don't want to belabor this point right now, but I think it's, there's an attraction to having live meetings, and there's an attraction to having people that can come like this. So I think we've got some things to figure out between now and June 15th.
Exactly, and we have to watch for guidance from OANC, see what they say as terms of what we're required to do versus.
Right. Okay.
So just kind of keep that in the back of your minds as we start moving forward.
Anything else, Commissioner Nemeth?
That really is it for now.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Commissioner Appa?
Yes, I'm finally on screen. I had to use my work laptop today. I don't have any major announcements, but a couple things that I just want to sort of piggyback a little bit off of what Commissioner Nemeth was saying. I want to ensure as a public health advocate that everyone is getting vaccinated. Our current vaccination rates for DC stands around, I think, like 40-ish%. That might be a little higher than that. So I hope that everyone does consider getting vaccinated. This is really important for our opening plans and procedures, so that we can all sort of get back to normal and continue to hug our friends and families and go to concerts and enjoy all the amazing things that DC has to offer. So that's one. The second thing I wanted to announce is the food pantry that I think back in January, February, I proposed a resolution with Ward 3 Mutual Aid. That food pantry is open. They are looking for donations as well as looking for folks to, advertise this. So just letting people know it is open, it is available. It's across the street from the UDC Venice Metro. It's at the loading dock behind the old Walgreens. So it's open on Sunday. It's open from Sundays to 1 to 4 p.m. Right now they have fresh produce and cleaning supplies. So I just want to give a big shout out to Ward 3 Mutual Aid for making sure that this got going. It's really excited to have a food pantry available in our neighborhood for those who are in need. So that is my big announcement, at least for my SMD.
Thank you, Commissioner Appa, for that. Next to me, I've got, let's see, Commissioner Wall.
Thank you, Commissioner Castile. There are a few things to update on. One, and I think Commissioner Bailey is going to talk about this later a bit, as it relates to some of the traffic safety issues that we are trying to address within the Forest Hills neighborhood. So I'll let her talk about that later on. I do want to mention that there has been one item that was submitted by a neighbor at the south side of Forest Hills Park. There is an entrance to the park there where the sidewalk comes right down to Brandywine Street, or Chesapeake Street, Brandywine Street, sorry about that. And there's no stop sign or crosswalk. There's actually an accessible ramp from the park's entrance that runs right down into the street. So presumably it seems like it's a safe place to exit, but if you're in a car coming either direction from east or west, you can actually see someone who might be coming out of the park, all of a sudden. So there is a submission to DDOT to study putting in a new crosswalk and stop sign at that intersection to help make that a little bit safer. Particularly important as the park gets busier and busier, as we're now into spring and summer. So, commend the efforts of our neighbors for finding that and highlighting that, and was happy to support that request. It's underway. DDOT has a time frame of about 4 months to do that study. So hopefully they'll get back to us, in the progress of that effort, and hopefully they'll put in place, some kind of safety intervention to make that a safer entrance on the south side of the park. And that's it for my update. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Wall. Commissioner David, you're next. Any announcements or anything?
Yeah, thanks, Commissioner Castile. I'm happy to have, I see Eric Colbert from the Forest Hills of DC, who's the president of Forest Hills DC, and Tina Sandry, who's CEO. They're going to talk later, but happy to have them on. I got a chance to meet Tina earlier in the year, so welcome. I have also been working with Bradley Graham of Politics and Prose. He mentioned 36th Street, issues of parking tickets there, and what it is there's no parking signs for folks there as DC is opening up. So I'll be doing a site visit with DDOT and the mayor's office and Bradley Graham on Friday afternoon. So we're going to be taking a look at that. And then there's also a sidewalk repair that's needed near 4700 Connecticut Avenue between Chesapeake and Connecticut that I'm looking at. And we've been talking about vaccines. So each week, the mayor's office, Serve DC, has had volunteers go door to door to just let them know, just inform people that we could go to UDC just down the street, or there's other locations to just walk up and get vaccinated. So anyone, I've gotten a chance to do that like 2 weeks ago, but if anyone's interested, it's just I'll put the link in the chat, but it's just bit.ly/Day of Action DC to just sign up to do that. And also the city has opportunities for those who, I know in a couple of apartment buildings, there are people who are having issues with paying rent. And so there is staydc.gov. They've got about 34 million set aside, 350 million set aside for aid for back payments back from April 1st, 2020 till now. So for anyone who's seeking its utility bills and rental assistance, staydc.gov. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner David. Next, we have Commissioner Mehta.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. I have 2 items to add. One is building a little bit on what Commissioner Wall was mentioning, taking off on the resolution that was passed at the last and monthly ANC meeting, which supported the addition of dedicated bike lanes and eliminating the reversible lanes during rush hour. As some of you may recall, there was additional language in that spoke directly to the mitigation of traffic that is diverted or redirected into some of the side streets, both on the east and west side of Connecticut Avenue, as a result of some of the measures that DDOT is looking to implement at some point, whether in the near or distant future on Connecticut Avenue. Commissioner Wall and I are going to be working with the Streets and Sidewalks Committee to identify, not just on a one-off basis, but to have DDOT take a comprehensive look at some mitigation efforts or measures that should be taken in the near future to affect traffic safety, but also in the more distant future when these measures for Connecticut Avenue are put in place. So it's sort of a short-term and a long-term, and how to address some of the safety issues regarding people who run stop signs, speeding, cut through traffic, which often tends to be people who aren't necessarily respecting the neighborhoods, and the walkers and the bikers. So we'll be working, if anyone is listening, who's listening or, knows of intersections or places that should be part of the study, feel free to reach out to Commissioner Wall and me, and we will put those on the list for the Streets and Sidewalk Committee to take a comprehensive look at in conjunction with DDOT. The second topic is that I was contacted by a constituent who expressed concern about standing water in the underground transformer vaults that belong to PEPCO. And I have since been in touch with Linda Greenan, who is PEPCO's community engagement specialist, and she has committed in the very near future, over the next week to 10 days or so, to get PEPCO out to this one particular location, which is at the corner of 32nd and Albemarle. A couple of other people have identified more locations, but again, if anyone who's listening, either now or in the next few days, has locations where you are observing standing water in the PEPCO's underground vaults, please go ahead and reach out to me, because that crew is expected to be out here to drain the vaults very soon. So it would be great to get me specific locations where you're seeing that. Ideally, PEPCO has those, but they're saying they don't. So let's pull together, and if anybody can identify those, that would be terrific. Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner Mehta. I have 2 things. One, I want to welcome who I think we have in the audience. Again, we have our Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton, who will be speaking to us shortly. We also have Gloria Garcia from Van Ness Main Street. We have Team UDC. We have Tony Donaldson from Mayor's Office, and we have Michael, I'm afraid I'm going to botch your last name, but Porcello, you'll correct me later, from Mary Chay's office. So welcome all. The second thing I have is I guess it's a kudos to the DC City Council. They unanimously passed the update to the comprehensive plan today. So that's a victory for those of us that are interested in more housing along the transit corridors, Connecticut Avenue, Wisconsin Avenue. So that's a good thing. That's all I have. I think what we have left is we have Commissioner Wall, Treasurer's Report. I get to, how's our money, Commissioner Wall?
We are in very good shape. We dispersed the 2 grants that were approved back for Van Ness Main Street for their wayfinding and activation efforts in the commercial corridor, as well as approving the grant to Rock Creek Conservancy for their efforts to continue to improve conditions in the Rock Creek Park watershed area. As of the end of the second quarter, which ended March 31st, we had an ending balance of $81,774 in our accounts. So we remain in a very, very strong financial position, which again, opens up to continuing to make similar grant awards to those that are looking for support for various projects to help improve the vibrancy and vitality of our community. So with that, I would encourage any folks who are on the call to take a look at our website, the ANC3F.com, and then look at the grants page. It has more information about our grant application process as well as the application itself, because we love to find other ways to support the community in any way that we can. So thank you. That concludes my report. Thanks, Commissioner.
Thank you, Commissioner Wall. Commissioners, any questions from Commissioner Wall, to Commissioner Wall? All right, hearing none, we have one action item tonight. As I think Commissioner Nemeth alluded to, 3F, the Commissioner for 3F07, Matt Buechner, has to resign, and so he sent his letter to the Board of Elections today. He had to move out of ANC3F, so because he's moved out, he can no longer be commissioner. We're going to miss him. He was a wonderful energy on the ANC. He was a member of the Universities and Schools and Universities Committee. I think he was a really spectacular secretary, or in terms of how he did the minutes, did a really good job. We're going to miss him. So that because of that, he was the secretary. We have to elect a new one. So we have a willing candidate, thankfully. So I'd like to entertain a motion to nominate Commissioner Nemeth to the position, and I'll look for a second on that.
A motion to nominate.
I'll make a motion.
Oh.
I'll second.
All right. There's been a motion by Commissioner Appa and a second by Commissioner Wall to nominate Monica Nemeth as our secretary for ANC3F, hopefully for the remainder of the calendar year. So Monica, Scout's honor, you're going to be here, right?
I'm not planning on going anywhere.
All right. All in favor, raise your hand or say aye.
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 All right. You're on.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay.
It was unanimous, 0.
Just need to make it official. Thank you.
All right. So without further ado, we have a very, very special guest tonight with us. Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton is on the call, and I'll admit to not knowing a lot, except she's our Congresswoman and has been helping for statehood. So I did a little bit of bio research. So so you have to bear with me. I'm actually gonna read some of these statements because it's pretty astounding in her story. So welcome, Congresswoman Norton Holmes. We're honored to have you at our meeting tonight. She's a third-generation Washingtonian with 2 children, John and Catherine. She attended Antioch College and Yale University. While in school, and this is what I thought was really important and interesting, became active in the civil rights movement and was an organizer for the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC, which I think SNCC was the acronym, but she'll correct me if that's not right. It was really one of the leading organizations in the civil rights movement. And so kind of we know the outcome of that. So that's really spectacular. So she taught full-time. She's taught before she became a congresswoman. She's a tenured professor at Georgetown University Law School. She's now in her 30th year, 15th term as the congresswoman for the District of Columbia. She's the chair of the House Subcommittee on Highways and Transit, so that might generate some questions. We have some interest in transit and highways. She serves on 2 committees, a Committee on Oversight and Reform and the Committee on Transportation Infrastructure. Before her congressional service, President Jimmy Carter appointed her to serve as the first woman chair of the U.S. Equal Opportunity Commission. She came to Congress as a national figure, again, who'd been a civil rights leader and a feminist leader, a tenured law professor, a board member at 3 Fortune 500 companies. She's been named one of the most 100 important American women in one survey and one of the most powerful women in Washington, another. Her work, full congressional voting representation for full democracy of us, and tireless champion for statehood for DC. And I think that'll generate some questions as well. Again, that's one of the hallmarks of her office. She's fought proudly for statehood. She also worked on a bill that gives city residents, DC residents, the right to attend any public college or university in the nation at an in-state tuition rate, or attend a private institution with a subsidy that can total up to $2,500 annually. So that's pretty spectacular. She's brought lots of jobs to the District of Columbia. I think there's what we've seen here is 6,000 jobs to Washington Navy Yard, and I'm sure there's many more. She helped the city end one of the most serious financial crises of the century in the 1990s by achieving a historic package that for the first time restructured the financial relationship between Congress and the district. And we know what a struggle that must have been by transferring $5 billion in unfunded pension liabilities and billions more in state costs to the federal government. I could go on all night, and I'm sure there's a lot of accolades for her. But without further ado, Congresswoman Norton Holmes, the floor is yours. Welcome. We're glad to have you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I so appreciate the opportunity to speak to ANC3F. And I'm going to talk about a kind of once over lightly the important work that's happening in the Congress today. And I think I should start with something you mentioned, DC statehood, because that's a historic matter. We now have, we have passed the bill with more than enough co-sponsors, and I stress that. I got co-sponsors, not simply counting votes, but co-sponsors to pass the bill, which would guarantee, since there were so many co-sponsors, that it would pass. Perhaps most important, a national, very detailed poll recently came out showing that 54%, remember that number, because I expect it to go up, 54% of the American people now support statehood for the District of Columbia. Now, how did that happen? It's largely the result of our hearings and the markup, which told people what they did not know, that the people I'm looking at right now in ANC3F, who live in their own nation's capital, don't have the same rights that they have. It was the effect of the hearings. People were all over the map. Polls showed some thought we had the same rights, we in the District of Columbia, some didn't know, some were even against because they didn't know to be for. So the hearings have been very instructive. You know, they told the people, talking about what they did not know, which I think is in no way, in large way responsible for the growing support nationally for DC statehood. They did not know, for example, that DC residents pay the highest federal income taxes per capita in the United States. You, my friends, the highest per capita in federal income taxes without the same rights that people who pay far less taxes than you do. They did not know that the DC budget was greater than the budget of 12 states. I have them listed on my website. They didn't know that the district has a higher personal and gross domestic product than any state that already has statehood. And they didn't know that our bond rating is better than that of 35 states. So this poll is very instructive. It showed that the district statehood was not considered just a local issue, and that it was supported by 57% of urban residents, 56% of suburban residents, 57% of people who live in swing states. Overall, 58% of Americans agree that the district should have statehood when coupled with taxation without representation. That's what gets the public riled up. And you even get 42% of Republicans when you talk about paying taxes without representation. Our majorities, we have 73% of the Democrats, 55% of the Republicans, and we have across the board support for statehood, college and non-college educated people, men and women, Black and white, younger and older voters. With that kind of support, even given how difficult a statehood bill is, perhaps more difficult than any possible bill could be, because it changes the composition of our union, we are getting somewhere on statehood. Now you are having your ANC3F meeting just as we have announced major victories in the appropriation bill passed. And I'd like to just say a word about them. The emergency supplemental bill, which responds to the January 6th. It's a special appropriation act passed, and it has victories for DC. It repays, it has the bill that repays our federally funded emergency planning and security fund. That pays for public and security costs that the district incurs simply because it's the nation's capital. We have fronted the money, and the Republicans have opposed fully funding this emergency funding bill, and yet we had to put that money up front. When you consider all the demonstrations that I held, excuse me, in the district, you call out our police, all kinds of emergency funding. After the January 6th insurrection, I think the lesson is that we must never underfund that fund again. The bill also contains my body cameras bill for federal police officers. I've had that pending for some time. The states, and indeed the District of Columbia, require its police to wear body cameras. But the federal police did not. I had a bill for that, and that passed. And I'm particularly pleased that my bill to keep any permanent fencing from going up around the Capitol. In fact, instead of any permanent fencing, you'll see a little bit of it is just left. What we will have is retractable fencing, so that you will have that wonderful land around the Capitol just as it always was, with retractable fencing to go up when it's needed. I couldn't even get our youngsters on the Hill this year when there was a snowfall, and we don't have many snowfalls. And so we need to have access to our Capitol. Look, it is really a garden space. We don't need to be kept out of that space. Importantly, I need to let you know that we got the full funding I asked for in the American Rescues Act, this largest bill that just passed, $2.2 billion, including funding for the district as a city, state, and county, because the district gives all services at all three levels. We got back $750 million in the CARES Act when the district was actually treated as a territory. Even though the district residents pay federal income taxes. We got back that in the American Rescues Act. And importantly, we got the priorities I asked for, including direct payments of $1,400 per person, extended and increased supplemental unemployment benefits, and rental assistance, which in this high rental district is much needed. Finally, let me say a word about other things that you may be interested in. I've been named by the people who rate members of Congress as the most prolific member of Congress in bills passed. I'm trying for that again as well to see if I can I can keep that title. That was in the last Congress. We are using reconciliation to get some things passed, including the part of the surface transportation bill. That's important for DC because of Metro, Amtrak, and because the city is so dependent on public transportation. I had a bill that I put in every single year, and it's been put in to keep the federal government open during a federal government shutdown that was particularly important when Donald Trump was in power. I'm going to be going tomorrow to the reopening of the Memorial Bridge. That's my bill, which I have husbanded away. I had to do it appropriation by appropriation. That's the bridge that leads to Arlington Cemetery in Northern Virginia, Lincoln Memorial in the District of Columbia. It had to be repaired. In fact, the bridge would close in 2021 unless the extensive repairs were done. I'm going to open that tomorrow. The National Children's Museum will remain in the Ronald Reagan Building rent-free. Most of our museums are rent-free, but the National Children's Museum is not a Smithsonian museum. And I had to struggle to make sure they would not have to pay rent. And that was important for the District of Columbia because the National Children's Museum is a big draw for tourists, and much of our income comes from tourists. DC tag, I hope you all know about DC tag. That's the bill I got when I was in the minority. That allows every DC resident to go to any state-supported college or institution anywhere in the United States. For us, that's important. The reason I was able to get that done is because people were moving in droves out of the district, and one of the major reasons was to move to areas, particularly in the region, each state has more than 30 state-supported institutions. So you see, you move across the river and you go to college for much less than if you lived in the District of Columbia. Excuse me, that may be the most important bill I've ever passed because it not only provides tuition, but it keeps people in the district. It's a grant program. The Republicans tried to cut it this year, but we kept them from succeeding. Let me make sure that ANC3F knows about my community meetings. If you request one, I can bring the National Park Service to your area. These have been among the most popular meetings, community meetings I have held, because it turns out we have parks that are owned by the National Park Service in virtually every ward. We don't have to pay for their upkeep. So we need to know what you need for these parks. I've gotten something that the district residents have wanted for some time, an extended lease, 50-year lease on the trust for DC's historic golf courses. They were going into disrepair. And I was able to get that lease, which operates these 3 historic golf courses, all owned by the National Park Service. And that's once over lightly of what I've been doing in the Congress most recently. If you have any questions or any comments for me, I have staff with me. So please let me know. Let me hear from you now.
So Congresswoman, that was very helpful. And I think even on the chair, but I think I'll first turn to my commissioners. I think there's a lot, Congresswoman Norton Holmes, in what you just said, there's a lot of material in there for us to ask some questions. So I'll first go, I guess I'll go to Commissioner Appa first. Or any of the commissioners have questions?
I don't have any questions at the moment. I'm happy to defer to other commissioners if they have any pressing questions. I just want to thank Commissioner Norton Holmes for coming to this meeting. It's really exciting to have you here, talk to us. And I really hope the DC statehood also gets passed, as you mentioned, for all of the above reasons, that I would love to have you represent us and have a vote in Congress. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Any other commissioner? Commissioner Mehta, Commissioner David, any questions? I can't tell.
I don't have any particular questions, but just wanted to thank you, Congresswoman, for taking the time to speak with us tonight. It's an honor.
It's my honor. You can always be in touch with me. You don't have to have all your questions when I come to you, though I hope you will have me come often, especially after this pandemic is over. We are getting our way through this pandemic. If I were out in the street and I go for a half-hour walk every day in the street, it was terrific to go without my mask.
I mean, this might be an elementary question, but I guess around statehood, I mean, I see the people have their posters in their yard size and all. I guess, what would you recommend we do? Is there anything we can do to help this, or are we just we keep relying on you and others in Congress? What can we do?
I appreciate that question, because all of you have relatives in other states, whether they're Republican or Democratic states. You could be helpful by speaking or emailing your relatives or your friends in other states and saying to them, particularly, email your senators, for them to email their senators to indicate that they support statehood for the District of Columbia. That's a way of reaching beyond our boundaries. Obviously, we're for statehood, but you have many contacts and relatives who could be helpful to us. So I do appreciate that question.
Thank you, Congresswoman. I guess if there aren't any questions from my fellow commissioners.
I do.
Oh, you do? I'm sorry, Commissioner Nemeth.
Hi, Congresswoman. It's great to see you again. We saw each other just before the pandemic last year broke out. So I'm glad that we both have been able to get through this. My question is, last year, ANC3F, we passed a resolution regarding the Melvin Hazen Park and the renaming of Melvin Hazen Park, and we sent that up to your office. And I know you sent a letter to the National Park Service about renaming the park. And so my question is, what exactly are what is entailed in renaming?
Now, which park was this? I think I remember that, but which was the park?
This is Melvin Hazen right here, which is an offshoot of Rock Creek Park.
Yes, and was he a Confederate general?
He was not no, he was a previous, I'm trying to remember what the exact title is. He was a leader in Washington, D.C. back in like the early 20th century. And basically he was one of the reasons why Ward 3 is lacking diversity. He basically destroyed the Black community that existed in the Fort Reno area.
And you all asked for a renaming based on that, right?
Right, yes, and your office had sent a letter to the National Park Service.
Yes.
Regarding that back in February, I believe it was.
And I don't know if we have heard back, but I tell you one thing, if we sent one that far back, I will find out what their response is and why I haven't heard back. So please look to hear from me on that. I guess I should send the response to your chair.
Yes, that would be perfect. Thank you.
Thanks for reminding me about that. Yes.
If there's no questions from the commissioners, we have people in the audience that I can't see, but I know you're all out there, and I think we'll open up. We've got, I think, for another 10, 15 minutes if we need to have some questions. So if there's any questions from the floor, and I'll have to ask help from fellow commissioners to sort of see the questions, either raise your hand or the floor is yours. So.
Mr. Chairman, this isn't the last time people get to ask me something, so please make sure that everybody has my email.
I think we do. We'll make sure that your staff can put it in the chat function. That would be helpful.
We'll do that. Staff is with me right now.
Okay, so Tina Sandria, Forest Hills of DC, has raised a hand. So Ms. Sandri, the floor is yours. If we can figure out how to unmute you, or you can unmute yourself.
Good evening, Congresswoman. I just want to say I'm also serving as the chair of the DC Healthcare Association. So it's all the nursing homes and assisted living communities in Washington, DC. And I just want to say thank you for all that you've done during this pandemic to keep our residents safe in this community. It has been a large partnership between lots of different resources within our city. So on behalf of the senior living industry, thank you very much.
I appreciate that. This has been a priority for me, yes.
Thank you, Ms. Sandra. Any other questions from the audience? If not, we'll let the Congresswoman off for the night, or maybe an hour. So.
Well, thank you so very much. We've been taking notes. We'll be back to you, Mr. Chairman, with questions that have been asked. I so appreciated the opportunity to speak with you, and please have me again.
Well, you're welcome. It was an honor to have you tonight, and I know everybody was happy to see you, and we'll try to take your advice about statehood, and we'll pay attention and look forward to seeing you again in the future. So stay safe and have a good rest of your evening.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. So now on to our agenda. So the regular agenda, we've got information items and announcements. And so these are items that we will not, ANC3F will not take a vote on these, but we've got several draft resolutions that are on the agenda. First is the UDC campus plan. And then we've got two draft resolutions on the FY22 mayor's budget, which hasn't been released yet. And I think that's it for the information items. We've got a couple others, smaller ones as well. Commissioner David has one, and then we've got the regular committee report. So I think we'll start with the UDC. And I guess how we want to do this is there's a master plan, and I think Team UDC, I think you're here. And we've sent you the draft resolution that we put together, which essentially talked about our overall support for the plan and also raised some concerns. So I think as far as time goes, we're a little bit before, about 9 minutes before 8 o'clock. So if you need about 10, 15 minutes to make a presentation, and then we can have some discussion around what you presented, and we'll talk about process and next steps, and then we'll go to the next item. So Team UDC, do you have a presentation that you're going to share, or are you going to talk through it, or what's your pleasure tonight?
Sorry, this is Avis Russell, General Counsel for UDC. First, thank you for allowing us time on this evening's agenda. We received a draft of the resolution about midday yesterday. We are in the process of gathering information to respond to the questions. We really haven't had enough time to go through all of them and provide the responses, but we will do so within the week.
Okay.
We checked with one of the issues that you raised was the transportation plan that is still being considered by DDOT, and we reached out to them to find out the status. We have not, at least as of earlier this afternoon, we had not heard back from them. Rose Slade, if you have gotten additional information, please feel free to share that. But we were not going to represent the master plan that we have presented, I think, twice to the ANC and to the new commissioners. So we want the support as evidenced in the draft of the resolution that has been posted. We understand your concerns about principally enrollment, transportation, our commitment to achieve what we've set forth in the master plan, and the continued partnership with the community with the task force. And so we will address all of those items and the questions specifically raised regarding transportation, parking, and sustainability within the week, as I said. So otherwise, I am available to, and members of the team are available to answer any questions you may have specific to the resolution or the master plan.
Thanks, Ms. Russell. That might make our conversation easier tonight. So I'll turn to my fellow commissioners if there's any questions. I'm not hearing any. So if there's no questions, I think that should be pretty straightforward. I know there's some people from Streets and Sidewalks that are on this call, but I think as you said, you're going to address that. And I guess the Transportation Demand Management Program, do you know is that a lengthy document, or do you know if you could help us understand what the extent of that will be?
It is fairly lengthy. Dan is on the in the meeting, and so I will defer to Dan to respond to that.
Thank you.
Yes. Good evening. I'm Dan Van Pelt with Grove Slade. So the Transportation Demand Management Plan was part of the overall transportation review that we submitted to DDOT, and they got it back in March. We're anxious to hear from them because usually there's DDOT usually has some things to say about the Transportation Demand Management Plan. So we've been checking in with them to see when we can get their comments. So it is part of the CTR, the comprehensive transportation review that was submitted as part of the application, the campus master plan application.
Okay, so that's helpful. So I think if I heard you, Ms. Russell, so we'll get some feedback from you within a week or so. And then I think what we'll do is gather amongst us, and then we'll kind of work on this. We've got, from a process perspective, we'll have this out as a draft, and then maybe some tweaks to it depending on the information, and kind of back and forth with UDC and other stakeholders. We're looking at this at our June 15th meeting, and then 6 days after the zoning commission hearing is on the 21st of June. And so that's in terms of the formal step, in terms of how the campus master plans go, it's really hearing before the zoning commission. And that takes feedback from a range of people, including the ANCs. And so, so that's essentially the process. And I think I'll speak for myself and the commissioners. We're certainly supportive and want to be supportive of UDC, want UDC to succeed for a number of reasons. and some of it's self-interest in terms of making sure that because you're such a key stakeholder in this community and such a valuable asset, it's in our interest, the community's interest, for you to be to grow and to thrive. And so we want to we want to do all we can to help that, or help you, help us, because if it's vibrant, it'll help make Connecticut Avenue come alive, and for all the other reasons, including that. By the way, it's a great place to send your kid to school. So we'll do what we can to help. I don't know if my fellow commissioners have anything else to say before we go on to the next information item.
Well, I just want to say that we appreciate the indication of support that you have provided us thus far. And we hope that after we provide you with the additional information that you've requested, that UDC's campus master plan will be received positively, and that you will be able to support the master plan.
Okay. Well, there'll be more to come. So thank you, Team UDC, for joining us tonight. You're welcome to stay, or as we gave the Congresswoman permission to have off, if you want to take off too, it's up to you. So thank you for joining us tonight. We'll look forward to seeing you in between now and the 15th and then the 15th of June. So thanks.
Okay, thank you all very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you. So next up, we've got two draft resolutions that deal with the yet to be released mayor's FY22 budget. So I think some of you might ask, well, why are we doing a draft resolution when we haven't seen the mayor's budget? Well, part of it's the timing. The mayor's budget was supposed to be out a bit ago, and I think that the timing's compressed. We at least wanted to get something out for discussion, and like we did with UDC, we'll have a draft of the resolutions out for about a month, and then on the 15th of June, which will be after the mayor's budget's been released, we'll take a vote on those. So I'm gonna, in terms of order, I want to take the schools and universities draft resolution up first. And so I don't know if that's Commissioner Appa, if you're gonna present on that, or
I think we have the chair, James Tannick, online. So I would love for him to talk through the resolution or the draft resolution, as he definitely has spearheaded this and really taken the lead on helping put this together. And I can add any additional comments. So with that, James, if you don't mind.
Yeah, for sure. So hey everyone. For those who know me, my name is James Tanderek. I am the chair of the Schools and Universities Committee. And this past month, a major part of the committee was working on creating this draft resolution for you all. So huge shout outs to Commissioner Appa, former Commissioner Buechner, as well as to Von Donovan, who's a member of our Schools and Universities Committee, for working on this resolution as well. David, I don't know if you're able to share the screen of the resolution by chance at all, or if you want me to sort of talk through the major points of it.
I think I have it, but it's buried in some file, and I don't want anybody to fall asleep while I'm fumbling through it. So why don't you talk us through it, if that's okay, unless of Commissioner Appa, if you've got the ability to show.
Yeah, I think James, go ahead and start us off, and then we'll try to pull it up. Sorry, I'm on my work laptop and not my home laptop, so I don't have it available. So apologies.
Yeah, no, for sure. So there's six key points that we're trying to pass in this draft resolution. And of course, just like what Commissioner Castillo said, is that the mayor's budget isn't released. There has been several delays, and so it won't be formally released until, I believe, actually a week and a half from now. And there's a very quick turnaround of it being released and then passed to the DC Council. And so we just want to, as 3F community, give some recommendations, ideas, just for the mayor to consider for the budgets in the next couple of weeks. So there's 6 major points that we sort of gave in the resolution. The first one, and it's been one that has been in sort of the news, the DC education news the past month. There have been reports about potential staffing budgets being cut, school budgets being cut. And so One thing that we definitely want to say is that making sure that that there are no big staff and school budget cuts. Now, I know that that may not be the case. I know that Mayor Bowser has said that she was promised to not do that. And I know as of actually today, there's been some reports that via the federal government, some schools are actually receiving some stimulus funding, which is like incredible. But I think often their first bullet point is saying that we don't want to see these, like basically any school, especially in the pandemic, to receive any type of like staffing or school budgets, and possibly even increase for the next school year, to make sure that the students are able to be in a good place for next school year. So that's our first point. Our second point is we are encouraging the retention and hiring of basically just school psychologists, nurses, and social workers throughout DC schools. We have recognized in this pandemic, students have really struggling with their own mental health. And so we just wanted to make sure that not only teachers are being retained, but also nurses, social workers, and psychologists, and even sort of including of additional more if and when possible. That's our second bullet point. Our third one is increasing the funding for wraparound services. So we know that there are many types of extracurricular services across school, either before or after school, that are also resources for students to be able to sort of, do homework, be fed, engage in sort of different extracurricular activities. Oh, awesome, thank you. And so our third bullet point is basically increasing funding for wraparound services. So that's student and family nutrition services, housing, and before and after care programs. So that's our third point. The fourth bullet point, and has been a major discussion topic this school year, is outdoor education. I think, including myself, I work as a teacher in DC, and so there has been a lot of talk about basically providing more resources and places where basically students can be taught outdoors. And so we also recognize too that a major reason why there are this increase of outdoor learning is because often our buildings are old. And so we want to make sure that there is the money necessarily, so that way there is not only increase for outdoor learning, but also increases for building infrastructure, specifically on proper air ventilation and windows. That's number 4. Number 5, another big thing in this pandemic is the use of internet. I teach virtually online, and I still have many students who have trouble connecting to the internet because the internet is very, very slow, and often they will freeze, or they won't be able to sort of communicate with them at all. And so fortunately, there have been several DC council members that have been trying to pass a bill called the Internet Equity Amendment Act of 2021. And basically, it is ensuring that there will be high-speed internet across all of DC, as well as providing access to internet in different, and basically in like all parts of DC as well. So that's number 5. And then the last one is basically the 3F bill that was passed last month on the DDOT Connecticut Avenue study. Basically, we like that, and we want to make sure it's properly implemented in the mayor's budgets. So those are our 6 major points from there.
Chair Tanderick and Commissioner Appa, thanks. Questions or comments from my fellow commissioners? Let's see if I can jog your memories with what I did not share the whereas, I figured just as Mr. Tanderick said, just the punchline. So it's like there's 6 items here.
And of course, the draft resolution is going to be available on the ANC3F website as a draft. We really do encourage comment from the community as we are really looking for input and feedback, especially those parents that live in the neighborhood. We'd really love to understand your perspectives. Just to add to this, I know we're talking about the resolutions, but we would also, as we have lost Commissioner Buechner, we would love to have more volunteers or more members for the committee. So if you are interested, please don't hesitate to reach out to myself or David, or myself or Commissioner Castile, as well as as Chairman Tanderick. So I appreciate everyone's help there.
Thanks, Commissioner Appa. And next we have, if there's no other questions, I guess if there's any questions from the audience, lest I forget, if there's anybody in the audience that has a question, this is be a time to at least is to ask.
Also, one thing I will add is that I'll be here throughout the whole meeting. So if you have any questions that you just want to just privately message me, you can either email me, I'll put my email in the chats, or you can just private message me in the Zoom call and I'll be here.
Okay. Thanks, Mr. Tanderek. So the next resolution we have, a draft, is pretty similar to what we did last year. It's around the housing programs. And so the Housing and Neighbors Committee came up with a resolution last year. That committee's been chairless. So I actually put together a draft and then kind of shared it with some committee members. And what I'm about to share is essentially the punchline of that. So let's see if I can do share screen twice in a row. Don't need a drum roll. So essentially, there's, like most resolutions, there's a lot of whereases. There's goals for the city, 36,000 homes, 12,000 affordable. The irony is that, you know, Ward, I shouldn't say irony, it's just one of the main issues is that the District of Columbia has about 52,000 affordable homes throughout the city, but Ward 3 only has 471 of them. So less than 1% of the city's affordable housing stock, home stock, is in Ward 3. It's expensive here. One of the goals that the city has is to have about 2,000 affordable units developed in Ward 3 by 2025. So that's, if it's 2021, 2,000, that's about 500 units per year that the city is supposed to be developing on an annual basis. So we've got some really speedy work to do. And one of the good things about that is that the comp plan passed earlier. And so at least that'll provide capacity or allow the possibility of capacity for more homes to be built. And what this resolution does is provide some of that economic financial engine to help that. And so the resolution has 6 parts. And really the 2 main ones that I just personally think are most important are number 1 and number 3. How this works is that the city has a trust fund, and it's been funded about $100 million a year for a while now. As the Congresswoman noted, there is a lot of federal money that's coming to the district, close to, I guess it's billions of dollars. And so there's an expectation that some of those funds can be used for housing and housing program uses, and that will get the city capacity to fund their housing production trust fund. And so the recommendation, and this is coming from a citywide organization, is really, and I think we should support this, is really $250 million to the current budget FY21, and then $250 million for next year's budget, which would it'd be a lot of money that could be spread across the city and then hopefully here in Ward 3. Another part of this piece is number 3, and essentially the trust fund funds units at the kind of the what they say low or moderate income range, anywhere from $50,000 to $90,000 per year. But to get to people that make less than that, there's something called the local rent supplement program. And so how this works is that a developer would get a trust fund loan, and they'd also get an allocation of the local rent supplement program. And so the recommendation of the $250 million for 2 years and the $16 million would parallel that. So you'd be able to have households earning less be part of that program. The second one up here is really the ERAP, which is the Emergency Rental Assistance Program. Again, this is helping tenants in emergency situations. And I think last year, what they got was about half of this. And so this year we're asking for $20 million to the existing budget and $15 million next year. Finally, on number 4, I know Commissioner Wall has raised the question of home ownership. There is a home ownership assistance program, which essentially is second mortgages to help people purchase their first house. I know that's a bit of a stretch here in Ward 3, but there are condominium units and co-op units that are relatively affordable where this program could be used. And so there's a recommendation on that. There's also a tax abatement for affordable housing in high needs area that was started last year. And we're recommending that that get used again this year. And then finally, and number 6 are some comments that came from members from the Housing and Neighborhood Commission, essentially looking at several items. One is to implement the moratorium on vacancy increases, and this is an amount of $200,000, slightly above what the recommendation was. There's also this idea of purchasing the Wardman Hotel, and and the other one was creating a social housing program. So I put these in here as, you know, for conversation starters. And I guess if there's any questions from my fellow commissioners or anybody in the audience, this is a draft. And again, like the other drafts, we'll have these out up until the 15th of June, and then we'll vote on them.
I don't have any questions. I think this is great, a great draft so far. So looking forward to hear from the other commissioners and other community members on what they think.
If there's no questions from commissioners, I'm happy. Anybody in the audience have a question? We're happy. This is the time to ask questions. I can hear a pin drop. So hearing none. So again, these recommendations, these draft resolutions will be on the website shortly. Appreciate all the help and work that the commissioners and stakeholders have done putting these together. So I'm going to stop sharing this, and I think we're on to the next item. So I think we have Commissioner David, let you make the introduction to the Forest Hills of DC, an organization to make a presentation. Commissioner, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Commissioner David. We've got president of Forest Hills of DC, which has been a long-term partner of ANC3F. This is where we're talking about meeting in person. This is the location that we met in person, and as well as what other businesses in the community. My own condo association would meet there for our annual meetings. So I'd like to introduce Mr. Eric Colbert, who's the president of Forest Hills DC, and Tina Sandry, who is the CEO. And if you could talk a little bit about, just introduce yourself and talk a bit about Forest Hills of DC, and we'll have like a just short Q&A.
Good evening, members of the ANC, and thank you very much for having us tonight. My name is Eric Colbert. I'm actually not the president. I'm a board member of Forest Hills, and I was asked by a friend to get involved recently. I've lived on Fessenden Street for 25 years, and until I was asked to be a board member, I was almost unaware of this facility's existence, because it fits so well in the community, and it just doesn't call any attention to itself. But I wanted to ask Tina, the director, to give a presentation tonight, or just a brief introduction, because I felt that there are a lot of people that live in this area who may have elderly family members or friends that are getting to a point where they could, benefit from a beautiful facility like this. And what better way to do it than to have something that's right nearby. And so with that, I'd like to introduce Tina Sandry.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Tina, and I'm the CEO at Forest Hills of DC. It's a pleasure to meet you all. I've been looking forward to meeting you all. I've had it posted on my wall for a year saying, meet the ANC in the area. I had the fortune of meeting Claudette last summer, and she was very kind enough to stop by and introduce herself. And it's been a busy time. I started here last May, and obviously with COVID and with not just the general lockdowns, but we were also under mayor's orders, stay at home for senior congregate housing types. which meant that not only were we keeping residents inside the community, we weren't even putting them on our buses to go out into the community. But all of that has since been lifted. And so now we're starting to reopen our community. We welcomed families back into the buildings, into rooms, into people's apartments a few weeks ago. And we are starting, we've been having garden visits all along, but we are really, with the weather change and with the new masking guidance and so forth, we are really much more open. And we have historically hosted this group. We've hosted the neighborhood village locally. We've hosted condo associations and other things. And we will welcome all of you back into our community again. That is our intention here as we are opening with new guidance from the Department of Health. We do have different guidance. It's a little different than what CDC is putting out for the general public. And so we are working with our Department of Health, Department of Epidemiology, to look at best practices to protect our residents. That said, throughout COVID, we really have had excellent outcomes here. Foresight, our dementia care, our memory care community, had its first case of COVID late in December last year, when we were well into the pandemic by then. And the science has shown that secured memory care environments tend to actually be where COVID spreads most easily, because the residents are less able to follow and maintain directions. And so I just think our COVID practices have been exceptional here. Our numbers are transparent. They're on our website. We invite you to visit the website if you like. We are part of the community. We really like to be a part of the community. You know, our mission is to be an organization that not just engages our seniors, but inspires our seniors. And we have worked very hard during COVID to maintain, we're a CMS 5-star community, but we're really proud of our COVID response, in that we have 98% of our residents in skilled care are fully vaccinated, 96% in our assisted living community are fully vaccinated, 91% of our associates here, our employees, are fully vaccinated, which is in many places close to double the national standards that's happening. So we instituted a voluntary program, not a mandate, because we felt, as an inclusive community expressing our corporate values of inclusion, compassion and respect, and using a trauma-informed care approach, that our work team had been through a whole lot in the past year. We were also doing weekly swabbing testing for folks, including plenty of times using the nasopharyngeal swab kits. And our workforce has been very dedicated here and worked in our community. So we went with a voluntary program, which has garnered quite a bit of national attention through, we had a recent front page story on the New York Times, and I was running down the street to meet the neighbors at CVS and stuff to buy up the New York Times issues on March 29th. So we'll be framing that one soon. And we've had a stint on CNN. We've been on Spain TV. Our practices here are best practices, and people want to hear. Tomorrow, I'm actually speaking to the hospitals and post-acute, which is the nursing homes and downstream care providers in New York, because they're still having vaccine hesitancy issues. It is an issue everywhere. But we have implemented practices that we just thought we were doing the best thing at the time, which have since been validated through science. A conglomeration of universities have done a best practices study, and so that's what we've been doing. And the reason I mention all this is because in this audience, there are going to be other managers, owners of businesses, people who work in companies that may be having vaccine hesitancy. We've been there, we've done that. We've been largely a fully vaccinated community for the most part since early February. We've just been waiting for the rest of the community to get more vaccinated so that we could open our doors. But we've been in this game for a long time now. And if anybody needs any help, I'd be more than happy to help, have a conversation about what we've done that might or might not spur some ideas for your company or organization. You know, we're all neighbors in this area, and we'd like to help each other. We'd like to be a good neighbor. We'd like to love our neighbors. I'd like to meet our neighbors. So I'm making the rounds and going around to the churches and try to meet the folks. I'm trying to meet the businesses and the restaurants as things are opening up here. And I'm happy to have you all as neighbors and invite you all to stop in sometime too, just like Claudette stopped by and said hello. So that's who we are, and I'm happy to provide more information another time. Oh, I guess I should say, we are a community. We've been here for more than 130 years. We are formally, we are still legally known as the Methodist Home of DC, have been here for over 130 years, got our humble beginnings at a brick factory 130 plus years ago in Washington, DC. Have had to move campuses a few times because of growth, but we've been here on this site across the street from the firehouse station and a block away from Politics and Prose for close to 100 years already. We have skilled care services. We're CMS 5-star. We have assisted living care. We've got a whole slew of different things from studios to 2 bedrooms. And then we also have a secured memory care support campus 5 minutes away from here over on Military Road. Very kind of beautiful building. And so we're here for you. We have been serving residents, not just of this ANC area, but all of the residents of the DC area for a very, very long time. And we're very happy to be open again. So nice to see you all. Oh, I forgot one more thing. It's Older Americans Month. And in celebration of Older Americans Month, I'm organizing a DC longevity fun run. It's going to be next Wednesday morning starting at 8 a.m. We'll be putting out a press release. Claudette, I can send it to you that has just a little bit more information about it. If you just want to come in and cheer, outside, it's COVID safe. But we're connecting our communities in DC. As I said earlier to the Congresswoman, I am also the president of the DC Healthcare Association. So it's all the assisted livings and skilled nursings in the DC area. And so in celebration of Older Americans Month, the fact that we've reopened our communities during COVID based on safer practices, we would like to help honor those people who have suffered losses in the past year. We'd like to celebrate the resilience and the strength of our workforce as well as our residents who have survived through COVID. We would like to connect our communities symbolically and physically and remind ourselves that we have lots more that connects us than divides us. And so that's important to us. So we have a 103-year-old resident, Miss Smith, who will be out on our front porch Wednesday morning at 8, holding a baton and wearing race bib number 1. She will be passing a baton to a runner from our building who will run it to the next senior living community in DC. He will then hand it off to the next resident who will be at the front door waiting to receive the baton in a race bib and handing it off to the next. So we have a total of 12 communities. We'll be running 40 some miles next Wednesday, and it will be going all over town. So you can cheer us on, come to the door and take a look. And it is going to be the first time that you ever see a 103-year-old resident holding a race baton and a bib. And it's about what we can do together as a community. So we invite you to celebrate. And at the end of the day, it's going to loop back and stop at our garden. If you've ever been in our gardens, they're gorgeous. We're going to have a longevity happy hour and just wait for the last runner to come in. So it'll be outdoors and you're welcome to come and join us in the yard. We had live jazz there last week in celebration of Skilled Care Week. We heard some of the residents in the neighborhood were walking by and listening to an artist that we had over from Howard University. And it was very well received. So.
Well, thank you, Ms. Chandru. It was wonderful to hear about you. Thank you, Commissioner Claudette David, for bringing this wonderful resource to us. Any questions from any fellow commissioners?
No questions, but thank you for coming by. I mean, I know that Forest Hills has been a wonderful partner to the community for years. I know I've been to the facility many times for various meetings, like Ward 3 Dems. I know ANC3F has also held committee meetings there prior to COVID. And so I look forward to meeting you. I'll try to drop by sometime. Maybe I'll be able to make it to that happy hour next week.
Please do, please do. And I'll send the information to you, Claudette, so you can share it.
Yeah. So thank you for coming by.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
You can check us out on our website. Oh, you can check us out on our website, Forest Hills of DC. And then you can see our experience there as well. You can have a visual tour if you wish. and you can just kind of see what we've been doing here. But if you really want to see what's been going on behind the walls during COVID, you can check out our Facebook, Forest Hills of DC. You don't have to even have a Facebook account to just put it in. You don't have to like our page. We're not tagging you or anything, just to see what we've been doing. We've been doing some fun things here.
Thanks, Ms. Tandri. And I think Commissioner Claudette, David put the email, excuse me, the website address in the chat. So if you check the chat, you'll find more information there. Thanks.
Right.
So next up, and you too, you're welcome to stay with us, but if you'd like the rest of the night off, we've been doing that all night, so.
Okay. Well, I might listen a little and then I might peel off. I'm actually also writing the press release, though. I'm working on that right now, too. Thank you very much, everyone.
Welcome. So next up, we have committee reports. I saw Mr. Dealing there a little bit ago from Streets and Sidewalks. Mr. Dealing, you want to give an update?
I am here. Yes. Hello. Thank you. So I'll just give a quick committee report. As I think you've already heard, the Streets and Sidewalks Committee had some input into the draft resolution on the UDC campus plan. So that's one issue we've been looking into. Last month, we had spent a lot of time trying to put together a list of some of the what we call the missing sidewalks or the sidewalk gaps in our ANC, and we've hopefully we've sent a list to our commissioners, and we're hoping that DDOT will take some action on those at some point fairly soon. Of course, we've been monitoring a situation with the Connecticut Avenue study and continue to do that. And that's it for now. Any questions, I'd be glad to respond to committee commissioners or anyone else.
Thanks, Mr. Dealing. Any questions from commissioners or anyone else?
Yes. Hi, Bob.
Hi.
Has there been any word out of DDOT regarding slow streets since it's coming to an end, they've announced, and any inkling as to what they may be doing afterwards? I mean, I know they've sort of been talking about what kinds of lessons learned and what kinds of things may they be able to keep or do in the future post the pandemic,
Right.
And also with streeteries and things like that. Have you heard anything?
I have not heard a thing except that the slow streets are either already ending or were scheduled to end soon. We had some discussions on our committee about related issues, the issues about lack of progress on Vision Zero and such. And I think that the question you're asking sort of fits well into that whole set of questions. So I expect our committee will keep tabs on that, but I think I will see if we can get our DDOT liaison maybe to respond about what's happening with a follow-on to slow streets. I've heard nothing so far.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
Commissioner Castillo, yes, one question for Mr. Dealing. As Commissioner Mehta mentioned earlier, we really do want to work with the Streets and Sidewalks Committee to be more proactive. So rather than waiting for whatever happens with the next stage of Vision Zero or what happens as a sequel to Slow Streets, perhaps if we could do some form of community survey of what the interventions are that we would like to see, and kind of create our own kind of working inventory of stop signs or speed humps or automatic enforcement throughout the community. I think it might be helpful if we could again get in front of that. So whenever that occasion comes with DDOT, we already have our working list of things that are asked. So we'd love to maybe in the next committee meeting for Streets and Sidewalks kind of introduce that idea more fully and just think through how we might collect that kind of information with regard to where we want to see some of those interventions.
Yes, thank you for raising that. I will definitely have that on our agenda next month. I agree it's important to get DDOT to focus on the short-term interventions as opposed to the longer term. So I'm glad to work with you on that.
Thank you.
Any other questions from commissioners or I think there's a commission. I thought I saw a question in the chat.
Oh.
See that?
I was not monitoring the chat. Is there a draft budget letter related to streets and sidewalks safety? David, I'm not sure I can respond to that.
I guess there's a short answer. I think the answer is no.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess the question to you is the committee, is that something that, I mean, I know
Right.
I don't know if you saw the add-on to the schools and universities where they essentially put in an item for funding the Connecticut Avenues, Concept C.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's something at a committee level you can noodle on a bit.
Good. Yes, I agree. Now I understand the question better. So budgetary issues related to streets and sidewalks. I'll put that on the agenda for the next meeting also. I mean, I agree. We definitely need money to get some of these things done. It's not clear to me if we need new money or if there's just, money for enforcement already there. We just need to make sure it stays there. But yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Dealing. Any other questions? Hearing none. I don't know if there's I know Erica Rosenberg has been out and out of commission, so we've been struggling with a chair, and I'm not going to pick on any of the parks and wetlands people like I did a couple meetings ago. And same for the Housing and Neighbors Committee. I don't know, Commissioner Wall, if this is a chance, I know we've had a conversation about an idea. I don't know if you want to kind of talk about that, or we can wait till the next meeting.
I think we can plant the seed tonight, and essentially, given that we do have a vacancy in the committee chair for the Housing and Neighborhoods Committee, as well as some of the areas that have been of focus to the committee over the past year or so, throughout this period of the dealing with COVID and the eviction moratorium and some of the issues that have arisen in some of the buildings. It seems that a lot of the issues that have arisen within that committee has largely been with regard to issues of public safety within the various buildings along the Connecticut Avenue corridor. And one thought that Commissioner Castile and I were thinking through was perhaps reconstituting some of our committees, and particularly that committee, to essentially change it into more of a housing and economic development committee that takes a more proactive stance around supporting our commercial corridor, being more proactive around creating more opportunities for housing of all incomes in 3F, and working with whether it's the council member's office or other parts of DC government towards those goals, with regard to again being more proactive around how do we foster a better environment for business and foster a better environment for mixed income housing. So that would be one component, but recognizing the fact that a lot of those issues that were raised with regard to public safety are indeed very important. Could we create a new committee that is actually focused purely on public safety? And that committee would be, working closely with MPD and a committee that's, monitoring the various crime reports and logs and information that comes out of MPD, monitoring some of these incidents that are happening, whether in the buildings or the park spaces or our streets, with the idea that, they can, devote more attention to developing ideas to address, any issues relating to public safety. So it's not necessarily something we have to decide on this evening. I would welcome any, community comments or comments from my fellow commissioners about those ideas, and perhaps we come back to it in June and see if it might be something worth exploring. And again, the idea is not to minimize the importance of the public safety issues that have been raised in the housing committee, but actually just elevate them more and give them their own space to kind of work more closely with MPD. And then again, on the housing side, to lean into being more proactive around solutions for the production, preservation of affordable housing, mixed income housing, as well as the support for Van Ness Main Street, our business corridor, and all the different tools that we could put in place towards that. Thanks, Commissioner Castile.
You're welcome. If there's any questions about that or comments, this, or we can take it up next month. We don't have to decide anything tonight.
I'll just simply say that I think I like the idea of a public safety committee. Over the last several months, 6 months at least, clearly public safety issues have really percolated and really have come up quite a bit, and within the housing committee, well, within the ANC, and often just has fallen upon the housing committee. And I think really, given how things have been playing out, it probably is best to have a separate committee on that. Doesn't have to be a large committee, but some team to just track that, because we are seeing more and more of it these days in terms of MPD responses to various things that are going on. And we've had some horrific things that have also happened in the past year in our ANC. So I think it's worth it. I like it.
Okay, thanks. Any other commissioners before we? Hearing none. So I think the next part of our agenda is, for those of you that are still with us, this is the time of the meeting where we have, if there's other concerns that you haven't heard about tonight, this is the time to let us know. So the floor is yours. And I see Gloria Garcia popped up. Welcome.
Hi, I've been here all along. Hi. Earlier, I just want to report a little bit on all the activities that Van Ness Main Street is planning, especially as we come out of the pandemic restrictions next Friday. Hoping that all the numbers hold. The mayor is lifting next Friday for all restaurants, services, there's no more indoor restrictions or outdoor on capacity. So that is going to hopefully boost our restaurants. But Van Ness Main Street is also has some events planned that correspond. And June 5th, we're doing a collaborative pop-up bookstore. It's used books. It's with Turning the Page. They're a nonprofit that focuses on education in Ward 7 and Ward 8. And so we're very excited to welcome them, because that was postponed from last April. June 6th, officially the food pantry kicks off. So we're excited about that, Commissioner Appa already reported on. On the 19th, we have the Humane Rescue Alliance Pet Pantry returning. So that's another service for the community, for people who have pets and want free food. We'll also take donations. They take donations. The most exciting thing I do want to talk about, and I want to thank UDC from the bottom of my heart and from the board's heart, is that we are going to launch on June 23rd, movie night in the park at the UDC Amphitheater. And we are going to do 2 movies in June, 2 movies in July, and 2 in August, all on Wednesday nights. And we're really excited. It's free of charge to the public, and thanks to our sponsors. So that is super exciting news. And shortly you will hear the list of movies, but we're really thinking this will be a fun event for the community as we come out of this, awful 15 months we've been living in. So that's really all I have, David, unless the commissioners have any questions for me on the ANC grant status. But
Questions from commissioners? I don't think so. I think I know what's going on. So I think next we have Mr. Scott Schachter. You had your hand raised. If you want to unmute yourself, if you can. I think you have the power. All right. Welcome.
Thank you very much. You can hear me okay?
Yes.
My name is Scott Schachter. I am a homeowner on the 3600 block of Alton Place Northwest, and I am raising an issue concerning EMS, emergency medical services provided in Upper Northwest DC by the Bethesda Chevy Chase Rescue Squad. The rescue squad up in Bethesda has been providing service, EMS service in the district. Actually was founded and located in the district, but later moved to Bethesda for about 80 years, serving the residents of ANC3 and others in Upper Northwest DC. More recently, the rescue squad has operated in DC in accordance with a memorandum of agreement between the DC Fire and Rescue Service and the Bethesda Chevy Chase Rescue Squad. That MOA remains in force from 2001 and is continued in force on a year-to-year basis. I've been a member at the rescue squad for 21 years, beginning in January of the year 2001. And in addition to providing service in Upper Northwest DC, our rescue squad provides service as we did on September 11th in 2001 when I was at the Pentagon fighting the consequences of the terrorism attack on the Pentagon. More recently, the board of directors of the Bethesda Chevy Chase Rescue Squad has been exploring terminating its arrangement with DC Fire and Rescue and terminating its service to the residents of ANC3F and the rest of its service area in Upper Northwest DC. Board of Directors is currently taking under consideration a recommendation from the chief of the rescue squad to terminate service in DC. The reason I wanted to speak this evening, and thank you for indulging me a couple of minutes here, is to inquire how I would go about procuring a resolution by the ANC, which would speak against the termination of service and in favor of the continued service of the Bethesda Chevy Chase Rescue Squad in our neighborhoods. So I attempted to get some information about how to do this. I apologize if I've not used the right process, but mainly this evening, I just want to try and get some feedback on what the right process is to do this. And the last thing I'll say is that time is of the essence. The board of directors of the rescue squad is likely to further address this issue in later this month. We're in May, right? Yeah, later this month, as well as in June. And very soon, a decision. I anticipate that I'm not speaking on behalf of the rescue squad, but I expect that a decision will be made by the board of directors regarding future service of the rescue squad in DC.
So, Mr. Schachter, thanks for coming out and asking the question. I mean, I think, and I'll just give a general. I think, you know, if you were through our meetings, you saw how the resolutions have worked, and I think had we had this safety committee, this would be a pretty easy one to come up with. But I think that said, I mean, I think you've sent us an email, and I guess I'll put something out there for commissioners' feedback. If there's a proposal, I think, you know, we would entertain a proposal in terms of what this resolution would say, and it's essentially, if you look at our resolutions, you know, there's two parts to it. One is really what the problem is that the resolutions be trying to solve, and in this case, it's support of this organization, and then, you know, support for the organization, but sort of, you know, and then the answer is sort of why. what are the services that you all provide? How are they different from other places? Just sort of what just kind of making the, essentially the case or the rationale as to why, the ANC3F, and people living here would support it. And I think and then you essentially, it's almost as simple as that. And then, so therefore, ANC3F supports the ongoing operations of the rescue squad. And so, and I think if we got that information, that would help us. But short of that, I guess if there's any questions that commissioners have right now that would kind of help us, sort of see. I mean, I can think of, part of it is, again, kind of why us, and are there other ANCs you've reached out to, and, and so on. So I'll stop there and ask if my fellow commissioners have any questions.
Yes. My question would be, and thank you for bringing this to our attention, and sorry if we haven't been responsive to emails, because I did see an email which got lost in the shuffle, but also they're in Maryland, so really a resolution from us would not really have any sort of effect. I mean, certainly they're outside of our jurisdiction. They have this memorandum of agreement or understanding. So I'm not sure how a resolution per se would have any impact, though a letter of some sort, nonetheless, just asking for their continued service, I think might be more effective. But I'm trying to think.
That's okay. I think.
I mean, it's who could we leverage within DC that might have a relationship that could. I mean, so this memorandum of understanding, they've entered into that with like DC Fire and EMS. I mean, and so should we reach out to DC Fire and EMS to say, hey, can you try to keep this relationship going? I mean, how can we best accomplish this? Who's the best person to send this to, or who's the best people to talk to? Because clearly we have no force with them whatsoever. There, we have no jurisdiction, so we're just residents. It's a letter writing campaign really would be just as effective or more effective, I think, unless we can get some organ of DC government involved to reach out to them.
Okay, Commissioner, thank you, Commissioner Nemeth. Commissioner Mehta, you got your hand up.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Mr. Schachter, please.
If it would be helpful, I could address these questions as we go.
Sure, please do. Yes.
The reason, why this ANC, I'm coming to the ANC because this is where I live, and this is where I've lived since 1998, and I plan on living here a long time more. So I thought this was the best place to start. In terms of, what leverage there is, I can tell you, and this is probably a matter of public record, that the Rescue Squad, as you may be familiar with, conducts annual fundraising efforts and has collected and continues to collect a fair amount of fundraising from residents of DC. So certainly the members we serve, the public that we serve, we're interested in hearing from them, and I'm appearing in that capacity to advocate for the ANC's support. On the issue of resolution versus letter, I think the leverage exists if the agreement, the operating agreement is with the DC Fire and Rescue Service. The chief of the Fire and Rescue Service in DC signed the agreement with our rescue squad, and my understanding is that Councilwoman Mary Che is a strong advocate of the rescue squad service and the continued service of the rescue squad in the city. So a resolution by the ANC showing support for the rescue squad could help leverage the assistance of Councilwoman Che.
Okay, I think that's helpful. Commissioner Mehta, you get your hand up.
Hi, Mr. Schachter. Thank you. I think you've started to talk around the edges of some of the questions that I had. Could you back up, please, and just give us an idea what it sounds like they until recently and hopefully for the future have been operating under an MOU. For how long has that been enforced?
The current MOU was executed, I believe, in May of the year 2001.
Okay, and then is there some financial arrangement? I'm trying to understand why, if something that's been enforced for 20 years, what is the impetus for it dissolving this relationship or going our separate ways, whatever you want to call it? Why would it be breaking up now?
I'm not sure I'm the best person to answer that question. I can tell you that, excuse me, our call volume in the district has dropped over the years. I think both as a combination of emergency medical service in the district improving over the years, and there apparently being sustained improvements in the fire and rescue service in DC is one of the factors why our call volume in the district has gone down. Most recently, I think our call volume has come down from levels in the past due to the pandemic. You may be aware that over the last 14 months or so, many folks were not so interested in going to hospitals and calling for emergency medical services. We have provided service in the district and in Montgomery County and the Bethesda area throughout the pandemic. We provide service at a very high level. I think one of the other factors to address the question is that there are costs involved, and the rescue squad is not terribly flush with money, and paring back the response area is one way to reduce financial pressures on the rescue squad.
Do you know if some agency or arm or institution of ANC3 helps to fund the rescue squad through donations? Or I know there are door-to-door donations, and in fact, I have opened that envelope and sent money as well, now that I think of it. But is there some ANC-wide appropriation or funding that goes to the rescue squad?
There is not. There is no financial arrangement at all outside of Montgomery County. The rescue squad does accept certain in-kind arrangements from the county. For example, our radios, in order to be integrated into the fire and EMS system in Montgomery County, we need to use the same radios. But our rescue squad through the decades has been strenuously financially independent. We've raised our operating budget through knocking on doors in our service area and securing grants to buy larger pieces of equipment like ambulances. Until recently, we had not received anything other than in-kind materials from Montgomery County, and I'm not aware to this day of any financial, governmental financial support from any level in the district.
Oh, okay, that's helpful to know. So help me understand, what is the rationale for lobbying? It seems to me that there has to be some sort of incentive or or rationale for the Bethesda Chevy Chase Rescue Squad to want to continue servicing on a volunteer basis and not ANC, sorry, Ward 3. Well, you're telling me that the funding is scarce, their funding is low, that the DC resources and support for emergency services have actually been augmented. They are better, they've improved over the years. So I'm trying to understand what the rationale is for keeping this relationship going when on both sides, it seems like there isn't a ton of incentive to continue in this kind of arrangement.
Part of the rationale is the historical record of the squad having been founded and being located in this ward. Further, we at the rescue squad, or I guess I should speak for myself and some of my colleagues, are very interested in continuing to provide the folks in Ward 3 and this ANC with the choice to, when they have a medical emergency, to either utilize the services of DC Fire and Rescue, which, at times in the past has been uneven, notwithstanding the recent improvements. So continuing to give the citizens of these neighborhoods the ability, the continued choice to call on our services is one of the primary motivating factors.
Okay, so the choice is up to the person who calls. If you live in Ward 3 and you call 911, the call automatically goes to a DC Fire and Rescue Squad. But if you call Bethesda, if you specifically choose to call the Bethesda one, then they will, at least for now, will come into Ward 3 and provide service.
That's right, with the caveat that cell phones, I'm not sure of the technical details how a cell phone calling 911 gets directed. You may have a DC cell phone number and be driving up Wisconsin Avenue into Bethesda, and that call is picked up by Maryland.
Okay, so putting aside those technical details, it is possible that somebody in Ward 3 can, at least for now, call Bethesda Chevy Chase Rescue Squad for support or assistance in an emergency.
Absolutely. It's 301-652-1000. There's a person there 24/7, 365 who answers the phone.
Got it. Okay, that's helpful to know. I actually wasn't aware of that myself. I thought Bethesda squad served as a backup to DC if DC was busy.
Yeah, that's an alternate arrangement, something called mutual aid, where during times of crisis like January 6th or some of the riots or demonstrations or terrorism attacks, where governments call on the assistance of other governments, like what happened on 9/11, where we were called to backfill Rescue 1 down by the Verizon Center when DC's Rescue 1 went to the Pentagon. We also sent a paramedic unit and an air truck, a truck that refills firefighters' air bottles, breathing apparatus bottles, down to the Pentagon. And that was by a formal governmental request, as opposed to a situation where a resident calls for emergency medical service. So the mutual aid is a separate arrangement that I believe would remain in effect past this MOA. The MOA deals with individuals calling for service.
Thank you, Mr. Schachter. Mr. Porcello from Councilmember Che's office is also participating in this meeting, and I would like to take a moment to ask him for comment or consideration of this topic.
Yes, Scott, thanks for sharing this. As you said, the council member is a strong supporter. I have not spoken to her on this specific issue, and I'd want to connect with our constituent services team to hear what best next steps are in terms of, best next steps in terms of taking action here and getting a full picture on, the impetus for this change and what would need to be done to reverse it in terms of, exactly which agencies would have to get involved, whether it would have to go to the mayor. And I'll shoot you my email in the chat. I'm going to say I'm actually out of office starting tomorrow on vacation. So I'm also going to share my colleague's email as well, so you can get a response immediately, just in case I'm not as responsive just because I'm out of office. But I'll shoot that to you now. You're on mute.
Scott, you're on mute. It's some button. Yeah, just push it. Push any button.
Any and all help and direction is really appreciated. I'm a bit of a neophyte when it comes to public relations and, for lack of a better word, lobbying. The idea I came up with was to start with my ANC to try and garner support from that ANC. I think a couple of other ANCs, or if not several, are in our service area, perhaps. The other ANCs could speak up as well. And if there's a way to, direct our advocacy to other more appropriate entities, I'm interested in pursuing that.
And Mr. Shachter, I appreciate you reaching out to us. Are there any other questions from commissioners?
I have one last question. You said time is of the essence. Could you be a little bit more specific? Because these efforts are for naught if the culmination of all these efforts takes place past some deadline.
Yeah, my understanding is that the MOA operates now year to year, and that the rescue squad up in Bethesda would expect, if it's going to decide to end service, that it would be a 1 year long winding down process, so that it would not be just a matter of turning off the light switch without sort of any community outreach and preparation. A lot of people in the ANC and in Ward 3 have stickers and magnets on their refrigerator doors with our emergency dispatch number, and there's going to need to be some educating going around that, if the service is going to be terminated, to no longer use that number. I'm not aware of a hard deadline. So there's the plan that's being discussed is to wind down service over a period of a year. The matter was presented to the membership of the rescue squad last night, and it will be further considered by the board of directors at its June meeting. I don't know that there's a specific resolution that will be voted on in June, but I can tell you that as I phrased it before, time is of the essence. The board may take a vote next month.
Thank you so much. I think I've learned a lot tonight. I appreciate your coming forward, and despite your not being a lobbying expert, I think you've done a wonderful job of framing this issue, which actually is extremely important. It affects everybody who lives in Ward 3. So thank you.
Right.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Any other questions? Or I think if there aren't any more questions, I think that we should, the six of us for right now, we should gather. And then if Michael, you and Ms. Che's office, and again, if there's other people we should talk to about this, I know Tony Donaldson is also on the call. And so between all of us, we should figure out what to do, what our options are relatively soon.
What I would actually recommend, Scott, is also reach out to Charles Allen, Councilmember Charles Allen, his office, because he is the chair of the Committee on the Judiciary and Public Safety, which has oversight for DC fire and EMS. So this might be, an area where you might want to just reach out to him, because that's his committee, basically. So, and he he's got a great staff. I know his folks there, I know him. And so I would reach out to them as well and get them involved, because honestly, because, you know, as an ANC, we meet once a month. It takes us time to be able to even gather stuff. If we even write a letter or do a resolution, it would take time. Something coming out of DC Council, something coming out of whether it's Mary Che's office or Charles Allen's office, that happens faster, and they can push buttons quicker and can make things happen sooner if necessary. So I would honestly start calling them.
Thanks, Commissioner Nemeth. Anything else before we've got Juanita Gray has been patiently waiting. Mr. Schachter, thanks for joining us tonight. And I think collectively we'll get back to you as soon as we kind of figure out what our options are. Juanita, you're patiently waiting. Welcome back. I'm glad you're with us. Floor is yours.
Thank you, Commissioner. Let's see, where do I want to start? The university held 2 commencement ceremonies over the past few weeks. The first was the undergraduate and graduate commencement held at the Convention Center. It was hybrid. We did have some students and faculty down at the Convention Center, but most of the students and their families were celebrating at home. We graduated over 800 students with associates, bachelor's degrees, and master's degrees. Former Homeland Security Secretary Jay Johnson also received an honorary Juris Doctorate from the university. And the keynote speaker for that ceremony was Dr. Stephanie Tompkins from DARPA, that's the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. For our law school, they were able, fortunately, to have their commencement ceremony at the auditorium. It was a socially distanced. Unfortunately, family members could not be there, but our graduates were very happy to be able to graduate in person with their class. The keynote speaker for the law school was Senator Cory Booker. And yes, so those are our graduations that took place. Very happy for our students and looking forward to see what they do in the future. Tomorrow, President Mason will be sitting on a panel with 4 other distinguished guests for the National Science Board. They will be talking about lessons from the success of minority serving institutions, and it will be moderated by Victor McCrary, who's the Vice President for Research and Graduate Programs and Professor of Chemistry here at the university. He's also the Vice Chair for the NSB. So I have sent that information to all of the commissioners and to several community members. If anyone is interested in tuning in, it's tomorrow at 11 a.m. Put your email in the chat and I will send that information to you. Just a small update on fall. We do plan on opening our main campus this fall. I can share that we will have some restrictions, well, a lot of restrictions, but students, faculty, and staff who do want to come to campus will have to have full vaccination. We're still working on details, so as I get more details, I will make sure that the community is aware of them. Also, everyone is, well, the food pantry has been mentioned already. We still have the clinics going, or the vaccination clinic in the front of 4225 Connecticut Avenue, the old Walgreens building. If you have not been vaccinated, you can walk up to those centers. So we are encouraging everyone to get vaccinated. And then lastly, the tennis courts renovations are still in progress. They're on track. They should be finishing up in the next month or 2. We have a community meeting on Thursday with some ANC members with President Mason regarding the tennis courts and what that may look like for the community. Once we have everything down packed, I will give that information at an upcoming ANC meeting. So that is all I have for right now, unless anyone has any questions.
Thanks, Juanita. That was a great update, and it was great to hear about what's going to happen in the fall. It sounds, consistent with, what's going on elsewhere. And congratulations on the graduations. That's always a wonderful thing to have happen.
Thank you. That's what we are here for, to educate and graduate our students.
Can you please send me your notes so I can make it easier for me to get into the minutes?
Yes, I'll email those to you, Commissioner Neiman.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Anybody else? Anybody else? Are there any other questions from the audience? And if not, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I don't see any other comments come through, so I have been doing a lot of motions today. Motion to adjourn the meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second that.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 Thanks for joining us. We will be meeting on the 15th, and we'll let you know as soon as we can as to if that's in live or if it's like this or some combination of the two. But thanks for joining us tonight, and have a safe night. Stay safe. Get vaccinated if you haven't, please. All right. Have a good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.